Welcome back to Dark Cinema Recaps, where horror is for life, not just for October. And we did The Exorcist back in July with the old way of doing it with the automated voice, etc. But we cannot do the other Exorcist films without giving the granddaddy of them all one more go out. Next week we're going to have the Exorcist franchise, whole thing recapped in timeline order. There, we'll announce what's coming up next. In northern Iraq, priest Lancaster Merrin takes part in an archaeological dig in the ancient ruins of Hatra. During the dig, he finds stone talisman of winged being that evokes a concerned look on his face. He then has a vision, which a giant version of the same being appears nearby, silently confronting him. In Georgetown, Washington, actress Chris McNeil is starring in a film directed by her friend Burke Dennings. McNeil, along with her 12-year-old daughter Reagan, rent a luxurious house with servants. Meanwhile, Father Damien Karras, a psychiatrist who counseled Georgetown University priest, visits his ailing mother in New York. He confides to a colleague that he is having a crisis of his faith. Chris hosts a party for Karras' friend, Father Dyer, who explains Karras' role as counselor and notes his mother's recent death. Reagan, seemingly unwell, appears and urinates on the carpet before Chris comforts her. Reagan's bed shakes violently after Chris returns her to it. Later, Dyer consoles Karras, guilty of not having been with his mother when she died. Reagan's personality becomes violent. Medical test finds no physical cause during a house call. Reagan exhibits abnormal strength. One night, Chris finds the house empty except for a sleeping Reagan. Dennings is found dead beneath Reagan's window. Detective William Kinderman questions Karras, confiding that Dennings' head was turned backwards. Reagan's body becomes covered with sores. Kinderman tells Chris that the only plausible explanation for Dennings' death is that he was pushed from Reagan's window. As Kinderman leaves, Reagan has another violent fit, stabbing her with a crucifix and turning her head backwards. "Do you know what she did, your hunting daughter?" She is confined to her bedroom. Chris seeks out Karras, who visits Reagan. The possessed Reagan claims to be the devil and projectile vomits into Karras' face while speaking in tongues. The demon says it will remain in Reagan until she is dead. At night, Chris's assistant calls Karras to the house. He concludes that an exorcism is warranted. His superior grants permission on the condition that an experienced priest lead the ritual. Father Lancaster Merrin, having performed an exorcism before, is summoned. Merrin arrives at the house. As the priest read from the Roman ritual, the demon curses them. The priest rests, and Merrin, shaking, takes nitroglycerin. Karras enters the bedroom where the demon appears as his mother, perturbing Karras despite his denials. Merrin excuses Karras and continues the exorcism by himself. Karras assures Chris that Reagan will not die and re-enters the room, finding Merrin dead from a heart attack. Enraged, Karras beats the possessed Reagan and demands the demon take him instead. The demon rips the medallion of St. Joseph from Karras' neck and possesses him, freeing Reagan. Karras hurls himself out the window, tumbling down the stone stairs outside. Chris and Kinderman enter the room. Chris embraces the healed Reagan and Kinderman surveys the scene. Outside, Dyer administers the dying Karras' last rites. The McNeils prepare to leave, and Father Dyer says goodbye. Despite having no memory of her ordeal, Reagan, moved by the sight of Dyer's clerical collar, kisses him on the cheek. As the McNeils leave, Chris and Dyer give the medallion found in Reagan's room. Dyer briefly examined the steps where Karras died before walking away. And that is, I dare say, the best horror film ever made. Like, yes, today it looks dated, but I remember watching this as a kid, and holy shit, that was a mistake. And it's like the first time you see Reagan turn her head around where she's stabbing herself with the cross, where she's vacant, that part even it's a bit of a nonchalant scene, even though Linda Blair ended up, I think she fractured her spine during that scene, where they're throwing her up and down on the bench. She's saying up and down, seeing her jerking back and forth. You know, it's really, really unnerving. And Exorcist just brings everything together, and the history of how the film being made is interesting in itself. That's a film within the film. And bringing all of that together is, like I say, it's just the best horror film ever made, and there's very little that can touch The Exorcist. We'll see you next week for the full timeline, and then we are going to be moving on to the next franchise.